Chapter 2. Not a single resource wasted. Zhou Tu's heart started racing in an instant. It wasn't that I was tempted by the succubus, but rather that the cheat software arrived. I can actually see the danger warnings on the floating islands. If I can see the danger, and I remain prudent, I can prevent it from happening. Gather resources, and then slowly develop it. Eventually we can turn the floating island into a paradise. However, Zhou Tu calmed down after a short while. Succubus. There are actually such creatures on the floating island? So floating islands are not as simple as they seem. Succubi are just one of the races. There may be other kinds of creatures as well. Zhou Tu looked to his left. Move the floating island to the left. You'll encounter a bee island, filled with birdsong and fragrant flowers. If you can defeat the poisonous bees, you'll obtain a lot of honey. Move the floating island to the right. This is a normal floating island, where you can find some basic supplies. Move the floating island backward. There are no floating islands here. It's an open area. Move the floating island upwards. You can obtain a lot of resources and blueprints. The floating island moves downwards, revealing a floating fiery mountain. After collecting information on the floating islands in all directions, Zhou Tu chose to move the floating island upwards. Overall, the initial danger level was not high. Unless you're extremely unlucky, the chances of survival are high. Holding the crystal, he connected with the island lord's heart through his thoughts. And soon he felt something pressing down on him, as if he were riding an elevator upwards. This indicates that you are overweight. The white clouds in his eyes suddenly receded downwards, and the movement of the floating island was beyond his imagination. In an instant, he felt a violent collision beneath his feet. His floating island was so small that he even felt it was about to capsize. Zhou Tu's heart was in his throat. He was determined to expand the floating island once the house was built. Calm your mind. Looking at the floating island that appeared before him, he saw that this island was much larger than his own, with some trees and a few dilapidated houses on it. For a moment, Zhou Tu even considered moving to this island to live. Island owner's heart reminder. After each island connection, it takes 5 minutes to restart. Select your direction of travel. Zhou Tu was taken aback. In other words, if he encountered an island with dangerous animals and didn't want to go ashore, he would have to defend himself on his floating island for 5 minutes. This design puts the floating islands in danger, but choosing not to go to an island also carries risks. Zhou Tu, carrying a backpack and holding an axe and shovel, climbed onto the island. Looking back at his own island, it was small, bare, with only a patch of green grass. He felt like a pirate, sailing a small boat to the side of a large ship. However, this thought only briefly crossed his mind before he dismissed it. Suddenly, a tremor ran through the island's heart. Remaining time, 59 minutes and 2 seconds. You can only stay on this island for 1 hour. Gathering supplies and building houses are the top priorities. Zhou Tu reminded himself that if he could find something like the heart of the island lord on this floating island, he could naturally switch islands. If he couldn't find it, it would be better to obediently go back and build his own island. Entering the dilapidated house, Zhou Tu picked up a piece of yellowed craft paper from the table. Island owner's heart reminder. Obtained +1 small house structure blueprint, yellow. We actually got the house structure blueprints right away. This is a great start. After tidying up the house's structural blueprints, Zhou Tu began rummaging through drawers and cabinets. Island owner's heart reminder. Obtained +1 tape. Island owner's heart reminder. Obtained iron nails +12. Island owner's heart reminder. Obtained gauze +1. Obtained scissors +1. Obtained paper +1. Looking at the empty wooden cabinets and tables, Zhou Tu paused for a moment, then raised the large axe in his hand. Smack! Wood dust flew everywhere, soaring high into the air, while dust particles danced haphazardly in the sunlight. These tables and cabinets are clearly quite old. He felt the indoor air was a bit stuffy. Island owner's heart reminder, gain +1 wood. Island owner's heart reminder, gain +1 wood. Island owner's heart reminder, gained +1 wood. Soon, Zhou Tu put everything in the room into his spatial backpack. Looking at the miscellaneous items in the backpack, Zhou Tu frowned. The backpack was too small, with only 20 compartments. Even a small thing like a nail takes up a space. If you collect too many supplies in the future, some small but useful items don't need to be stored in your spatial backpack. You can carry them directly on your person. They left the house. Zhou Tu ran towards the 3 trees in the distance. There are only 35 minutes left. When Zhou Tu arrived in front of the trees, he realized that these 3 trees were actually apple trees, and the apples on them were green apples. Zhou Tu picked up an axe and chopped down 3 apple trees. He gained 12 wood and 52 green apples. Zhou Tu wiped the sweat from his brow, feeling a bit thirsty. Cutting down trees was really hard work. I looked around the island and plucked a few handfuls of very tall grass. Gained 20 grass. There are only 3 minutes left. Zhou Tu jumped back to his own floating island from the narrow connection, watching the floating island opposite him disappear. He finally breathed a long sigh of relief. It's not that he doesn't want apple trees, but his floating island is simply not suitable for planting. His island is only 10 meters in diameter, and there's not much space left to build a house. Moreover, digging up trees takes much more time than cutting them down. I took a look at the things I brought back from the floating island this time. Small house structure blueprint 1, wood 28, tape +1, nails 12, gauze 1, scissors 1, green apple 52, paper 1, grass 20. I glanced at the materials used to build the makeshift house. 5 more pieces of soil are needed. But with a small house structure blueprint, why bother with a simple house? Let's build the best we have. Zhou Tu opened the blueprints for the small house construction. 40 wood, 20 nails, 15 stone, 20 grass. A small yellow building blueprint requires so many materials. However, he breathed a sigh of relief when he thought about the materials he had just collected. As long as you choose the right floating island, collecting materials is quite fast. Zhou Tu took out a green apple and ate it while recovering his strength, then opened the chat channel. Regional chat rooms, 1697-32. Zhou Tu discovered that more than 200 people had died in such a short time. As expected of a survival-themed world, so many people have died in such a short time. The mortality rate is truly high. How did they die? Is this floating island really that dangerous? Are there any experts in this area who can guide me? We're in the same alliance, and I'm light, agile, and have a cute lowly voice. I'm getting thirsty. Is there anyone willing to trade me some water for free? I'm also very hungry. Could you give me some food? No one will starve to death if they don't eat for a day. Instead of chatting like this, let's take control of the floating island and go find supplies. Zhou Tu looked at the chat. After such a long time, many people still haven't taken their first step outside the floating island. But none of this concerns him. Developing floating islands and building houses to resist the darkness of night is the best choice now. Feeling that his strength had recovered considerably, Zhou Tu turned his attention back to what was ahead. Now he needs to find an island with food and water. Such a resource-rich island is the preferred choice. Focus your attention on what's ahead. Move forward on the floating island, and you will encounter a snake island, which is infested with snakes.